Failure doesn't have to be your biggest nightmare. In fact, it can be surprisingly easy to reframe that fear and transform it into a catalyst for growth. Fear often shows up as a warning sign, a flashing indicator that something matters to you, but it's not always an accurate measure of real danger. Instead, it's more like a built-in alert system telling you, hey, we're stepping out of our comfort zone here. That alert can be useful because it signals that you're on the cusp of doing something that might stretch your capabilities. The problem is when it paralyzes you rather than motivates you. Fear of failure can convince you that the only acceptable outcome is perfection and anything less is a disaster. That viewpoint can hold you back from learning new skills, taking on exciting projects, or pushing beyond your perceived limits. Reframing failure as part of the learning process, rather than an indictment of your worth, is what makes this journey so much simpler. It's the mental shift from, I must not fail, to, if I fail, I'll learn something valuable. That simple pivot changes the stakes dramatically. Suddenly, the idea of failing doesn't end in shame, it ends in insight. Mistakes offer data, feedback, and clues about what to try next. They're not definitive verdicts on your capabilities, just signals that something in your approach could use adjusting. You might discover you need a new strategy, a different study method, or a bit more practice in an area you haven't mastered yet. When you internalize this perspective, every slip-up becomes a building block for future success. It's not magic, it's more like giving yourself permission to be human. Of course, implementing this mindset can feel awkward at first if you're used to seeing mistakes as catastrophic. That's where the idea of worst-case scenario thinking can help. Ask yourself what would honestly happen if you failed a test, missed a shot, got rejected by a potential employer, or made a mistake during a presentation. In most cases, it won't define your entire future. Sure, it might sting for a bit, but once you put it into perspective, the fear generally loses its intensity. You learn, you bounce back, and you move on to the next opportunity. Another strategy is to replace dread with curiosity. Instead of focusing on everything that could go wrong, consider what might go right. Maybe you'll discover hidden strengths or gain experiences you never would have had if you'd let fear take the wheel. You might even spark a new passion or form valuable connections. By exploring the possibility of success, and, at the very least, the possibility of learning something useful, you balance out the dread that usually comes with fear of failure. Overcoming fear of failure also hinges on recognizing that nobody else is judging your stumbles as harshly as you are. Most people are too busy handling their own challenges to dwell on your slip-ups. That truth alone can lift a massive burden because suddenly you're not performing under an all-seeing microscope. You have the freedom to try, to learn, to grow, without the pressure of an audience waiting to pounce on any mistake. When fear does pop up, see it as a reminder that you're doing something meaningful. If you didn't care about it at all, you wouldn't be nervous. That flicker of anxiety means you're stepping up to something that has potential to stretch your boundaries. Instead of treating that flicker like a stop sign, think of it as a green light for growth. You can say, all right, fear, thanks for letting me know this matters. I'll keep going anyway. Practical tools can make this process smoother. Writing down your fears is one way to get a handle on them. When they swirl around in your head, they can balloon into huge, amorphous threat. By putting pen to paper, you translate those vague anxieties into concrete sentences. You might find yourself thinking, wait, this isn't so bad after all. It's like turning on the lights in a dark room. Once you see what you're dealing with, it's less intimidating. Celebrating small wins is another underrated tactic. Many of us breeze past little victories because we're too focused on the next big hurdle, but each minor triumph is proof that you can handle challenges. Maybe you volunteered a comment in a meeting, or took a first step toward a long-standing goal. Acknowledge that progress because it reinforces the idea that trying, and sometimes failing, is worth it. Over time, these small celebrations rewire your brain to notice what's going right instead of obsessing over everything that could go wrong. There's also the concept of childlike resilience. Think about how children learn to walk. They fall repeatedly, but they don't label themselves as failures. They just get up and try again, because the idea of walking is more compelling than the fear of falling. As we get older, we often lose that innate persistence. We start interpreting stumbles as personal flaws rather than natural parts of any learning process. Reclaiming that resilience can make all the difference. Falling short doesn't mean you're unworthy. It means you're in the thick of growth. Another powerful step is letting go of the idea that you have to feel completely fearless before taking action. Courage isn't the absence of fear, it's taking steps forward while that fear lingers in the background. You don't need to eliminate the butterflies in your stomach. You just need to move ahead regardless. After a few brave attempts, you'll realize you can function perfectly well alongside those nerves, and they'll often fade as you gain experience. It's also worth noting that fear of failure can become a self-fulfilling prophecy if you let it dominate your thoughts. Worrying about messing up sometimes creates enough pressure that you actually do stumble more than you would if you approach the situation with a calm, open mind. When you remove that pressure by accepting that a misstep won't define you, you often perform better. It's paradoxical but true. Letting yourself fail can actually reduce the likelihood of failing. This isn't an overnight transformation. Realistically, you'll have moments when the old mindset creeps back in, telling you that you need to be flawless or else. The key is consistency. Each time you notice those thoughts, gently guide yourself back to the new perspective. Mistakes help me learn, and learning makes me stronger. Over time, this practice becomes more natural, and you'll catch yourself reframing automatically. You'll also notice that you're more inclined to say yes to opportunities, apply for positions you once deemed out of reach, or speak up when you used to stay silent. If you do happen to fall flat, remind yourself that this doesn't erase all your progress. It's a single moment in a long journey of self-improvement. Pick it apart for lessons, jot down what you might do differently next time, and keep going. That's how you turn what might seem like a dead end into a useful detour. Every successful person has a trail of failed attempts behind them. They just got good at harvesting the lessons and pressing on. Replacing fear with action is often the best antidote. The longer you sit and imagine all the ways failure could ruin everything, the bigger that anxiety grows. But once you dive in, pitch an idea, send an application, practice a skill, you realize it's not as terrifying as the stories in your head. Even if the outcome isn't perfect, you've broken through the inertia. Movement itself is empowering because it shifts your mindset from passive dread to active participation in your own life. Taking these steps might reveal hidden abilities or passions you never knew you had. That's the wonderful side effect of tackling fear. It opens doors you didn't see before. You discover new facets of your personality, realize you're capable of more than you suspected, and build a reservoir of confidence you can draw on for future challenges. Remember, the real trick is seeing failure as one part of a bigger journey. It's not the final chapter of your story. One setback won't cancel out all your successes. In fact, overcoming setbacks often becomes your favorite chapter to look back on, because that's where you can see growth in the most tangible way. The discomfort you feel in the moment eventually turns into the narrative of how you became stronger, wiser, or more resourceful. That's a priceless payoff for enduring a bit of temporary fear. So keep it simple. Embrace the fact that fear of failure is natural. Challenge it by asking, what if this goes right? What can I learn if it goes wrong? Remind yourself that perfection is never mandatory, and that real progress often comes from trial and error. Celebrate your small steps toward confidence, rather than punishing yourself for not being flawless. And remember that every bold move strengthens your resilience muscle, making you more ready for whatever comes next. Try this out today. Choose something small, maybe a task you've been nervous about, and do it with the understanding that if you fail, you'll learn. Let that mindset carry you through. If the result is better than expected, fantastic. You've gained confidence. If the result is worse, you gain knowledge about what not to do next time. Either outcome is a win in some form. Keep going, and you'll find that your fear of failure shrinks while your sense of possibility expands. If you resonate with these ideas, jump into the comments and share one fear you're ready to reframe. This conversation can continue long after the video ends, and you might inspire someone else to confront their own worries. Also, consider subscribing for more straightforward insights on personal growth and self-improvement. Life doesn't have to be governed by fear. You can step up, take your shot, and keep learning one action at a time. So let yourself fail if it comes to that. You're not here to be perfect. You're here to evolve. And once you truly accept that, fear of failure stops being a roadblock and becomes just another part of the adventure.